There are too many unanswered questions, and China has been too deceitful and too incompetent in managing this for us to just take the word of the Chinese Communist Party.
Senator, I just want to go back to the comments from the Chinese ambassador to the United States. Over the weekend, he said it's very harmful, it's very dangerous to stir up suspicion, rumors, and spread them among the people. For one thing, this creates panic. Another thing is that it will fan up racial discrimination, xenophobia, and all these things that will really harm our joint efforts to combat the virus. Obviously, on the Intelligence Committee, you know more about what's happening. How firm are you in your concerns about this?
So I have two responses to the Chinese ambassador. One, the thing that really is harmful, that really spreads fear, is China lying about the origins of this disease and about the number of people who have it, and excluding American and other Western scientists from China to try to get to the bottom of it. Second, in terms of the claims of racism, the Chinese people are the first and the worst victims of the Chinese Communist Party. We should all hold them in our prayers and hope that we can get a vaccine, because they are the people who are most harmed by the Chinese government's incompetence and duplicity.
What are your concerns on the coronavirus at this point? If the travel ban has kicked in, do you still have a heightened level of concern about this? How would you describe your thoughts?
I do. You know, the travel ban was an essential step to minimize the risk to the United States. But the first cases of this viral pneumonia appeared in early December, which meant it could have been incubating as early as mid-November. That means maybe 1.5 million people flew from China into the United States in that period of time. That's why our government is taking such an aggressive posture toward trying to identify persons who might have coronavirus and conduct contact tracing with people with whom they've come into contact, as well as pushing out testing kits to all 50 states. But it's also essential that we work with our partners around the world and the World Health Organization to err on the side of caution. When there's so much that is unknown still about this virus, an ounce of prevention truly is worth a pound of cure.
Trump's handling of the coronavirus, and we did a very early move on that. I was criticized by a lot of people at the beginning because we were the first. We'd never done it before. We closed our borders to certain areas. I spoke with President Xi of China, and he's working very hard on this. It's a tremendous problem, but they're very capable, and they'll get to it. There's a theory that in April, when it gets warm, historically, that has been able to kill the virus, so we don't know yet. We're not sure yet. But we have very strong borders, and that's what we're here to talk to you about today. I thought I'd show this to you because right now we have 122 miles of wall that's been built. The panel on top, just in case people want to know, because I would have loved it without the panel, but actually it's called an anti-climb panel. It makes it very tough to climb over the top. But what you have is when that gets painted black, it becomes virtually untouchable during many parts of the season because of the sun hitting it. The black absorbs the heat. So not only would you have to be a good climber, but you're going to have to bring a hose with lots of water to water it down. And there aren't too many hoses in the area. There's not too much water in the area either.
As more data comes in from China, we're starting to get a clearer picture of the outbreak, how it's developing and where it could be headed. Today, China has published a paper with detailed data on more than 44,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19. This data give us a better understanding about the age range of people affected, the severity of the disease, and the mortality rate. As such, they're very important in enabling WHO to provide good evidence-based advice to countries. We encourage all countries to share their data publicly. The data also appear to show a decline in new cases. This trend must be interpreted very cautiously. Trends can change as new populations are affected. It's too early to tell if this reported decline will continue. Every scenario is still on the table. It also appears that COVID-19 is not as deadly as other coronaviruses, including SARS and MERS. More than 80% of patients have mild disease and will recover. In about 14% of cases, the virus causes a severe disease, including pneumonia, and shortness of breath. And about 5% of patients have critical disease, including respiratory failure, septic shock, and multi-organ failure. In 2% of reported cases, the virus is fatal, and the risk of death increases the older you are. We see relatively few cases among children. More research is needed to understand why. This new data address some of the gaps in our understanding, but others remain. The international team of experts now on the ground in China is working with Chinese counterparts to better understand those gaps and improve our understanding of the outbreak.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that WHO uses the word pandemic phase specifically for influenza outbreak cases. But should the global risk assessment of COVID-19, which is high now, turns into very high in the future, would it be safe for us journalists to say or call it pandemic in general terms? Thank you.
Yeah, I think we need to be extremely cautious in using the term pandemic. We had lots of controversies during the H1N1 situation around when it was pandemic and when it wasn't pandemic, and I think we need to be careful. The real issue here is whether we're seeing efficient community transmission outside of China. And at the present time, we're not observing that. And as such, we're not in a position to have that discussion. What we're seeing is, again, as we said previously, the majority of cases outside China have a direct link still back to China. And of that transmission that's occurred in countries outside China, the majority of that transmission can be traced through existing transmission chains. So therefore, I think we have to be very, very careful not to drive fear in the world right now, and be very cautious in using the words you have used. We've said it, the risk is very high in China, it is high regionally, and it is high around the world. That is not the risk is high of a pandemic. The risk is high that the disease may spread further, and I think at face value that is true. I don't know, Sylvie, you may have a comment on this.
No, I think you are right. I think the difficulty with certain words is that their interpretation varies, and for general public, very often pandemic is really the worst case scenario. And so I think we need, before qualifying the event as the worst case scenario, we need a lot more evidence and a lot more data, and so that's why I think we need to be cautious, because it can really create panic. Unnecessarily, because what is important currently is that we all agree on the risk assessment so that we can all tackle the virus the same way.
Thank you very much.
President, are you still satisfied with how President Xi is handling the coronavirus?
I think President Xi is working very hard. As you know, I spoke with him recently. He's working really hard. It's a tough problem. I think he's going to do... Look, I've seen them build hospitals in a short period of time. I really believe he wants to get that done, and he wants to get it done fast. Yes, I think he's doing it very professionally. We're also working with him and helping him as of the last few days, as you know.
Some people don't seem to trust the data coming out of China. Are you worried about that?
Look, I know this. President Xi loves the people of China. He loves his country. And he's doing a very good job with a very, very tough situation.
The president attacked me this morning on Twitter, and he attacked me again this afternoon in an interview. So let me say this, Mr. President, you can't bully me, and I won't let you bully the American people. I'm going to take the fight to Donald Trump all over America, including right here in Texas. Because I believe this year we can turn Texas blue.
are new signs global fears are rising over the coronavirus. In Ukraine, protesters set fires, put up barricades, and threw rocks at a bus carrying newly arrived evacuees from China. Now, this comes as South Korea confirmed dozens of new cases of the virus, and Japan grapples with a crisis ahead of the 2020 Olympic Games.
This morning, panic and protests in Ukraine as it brings its citizens home from China. A false rumor that 5 of the returnees were infected with the virus sparked violent clashes with police, a sign of the spreading global fear around COVID-19.
I just thought it's so important that we recognize that. And to the people of Wuhan, it is recognized. The world's in your debt. And when this disease finishes, hopefully we'll have a chance to thank the people of Wuhan for the role that they've played in it. It's so much to express and explain, and it's so important that the world understands it at this point, because every day we stop to think about this disease and make decisions, should we do it or we not, this virus will take advantage and almost double the number of cases. You have to move fast. Thank you.
Yeah, come with me as we stalk House Speaker Pelosi right now. She's been taking a tour down Chinatown, and we have stopped already at a temple. We've stopped at a fortune cookie factory, the Walk Shop, which sells cookware, and now she is stopping at one of the little gift shops in Chinatown. If you can see her live now, she has been talking to people along the way, a lot of business owners, a lot of community leaders here in Chinatown who have been concerned about the optics of the coronavirus and the fear that some people might have of coming to a place like Chinatown that might have a lot of Chinese nationals. So she has been going around to show that it is perfectly safe to be here.
It's exciting to be here, especially at this time, to be able to be unified with our community. We want to be vigilant about what it might be on what is out there in other places. We want to be careful about how we deal with it, but we do want to say to people, come to Chinatown. Here we are. We're, again, careful, safe, and come join us.
Here's another big story we are tracking: coronavirus. The World Health Organization gave us an update earlier. The Canadian doctor who is part of the team investigating coronavirus in China just, in fact, returned from Wuhan. Despite concerns the virus is spreading, he praised the work being done in China.
A phenomenal collective action and cooperation by the people of China to this response. And the interesting thing is people have commented on that and say, oh, that's easy in a society or a political system like China. It isn't. It's never easy to get the kind of passion, commitment, interest, and an individual sense of duty that it's our duty to help stop this virus.
Although there are dramatic new cases of coronavirus, the WHO has not declared the spread of the virus a pandemic. And what exactly is a pandemic? Well, the WHO defines it as a consistent spread of a new disease around the world where people have not yet gained immunity.
2 years ago, this subcommittee created an infectious disease fund to provide flexibility funding for the department for immediate response. You've used that money as intended. That first $105 million lets you respond to the coronavirus in ways that you wouldn't have been able to respond otherwise.
Yesterday, OMB sent a request to make $2.5 billion in funding available for preparedness and response, including for therapeutics, vaccines, personal protective equipment, state and local support, and surveillance.
I'm told that the diagnostic doesn't work.
That's incorrect. That is simply flatly incorrect. The diagnostic works at CDC and at 12 sites. It has been validated. At other sites, we're working to get them validated. This is a working diagnostic. In the areas of the 170 labs where it was sent, there was a problem in the third reagent stage of it that led to inconclusive results against control. We're assessing right now with the FDA whether that actual step is needed in the process, and we have 70 private sector diagnostic manufacturers who are working to bring forward diagnostics, and we will work with those on emergency use authorization.
But we're not there yet.
We are now, 50 days into it? This is historic. No administration, no CDC in American history has delivered like this.
I don't question that at all.
Recognizing that the threats to the homeland are more dynamic than ever before, the budget also positions the department to respond to emerging threats, including those emanating from nation states. DHS is also helping to manage the U.S. government's response to the coronavirus. Today, the risk from coronavirus to Americans remains relatively low, and we will continue to implement measures designed to keep it that way. DHS has responded with proactive safeguards, including directing all flights from China to pre-selected airports for medical screening. And the department stood up that medical screening in a very rapid fashion using contracts from our CWMD office, and we continue to provide those contracts at those 11 airports. I'll now highlight a handful of specific priorities included in the fiscal 21 budget. The security of our nation's border also remains a priority focus for the administration and the department. Most notably, as mentioned, the budget includes $2 billion for the construction of approximately 82 miles of new border wall system, as well as funding for additional technology and staffing. While securing our borders is of utmost importance, the integrity of our immigration system requires that we enforce the law as written. It remains the priority of the department to protect our citizens by identifying, detaining, and removing criminal aliens from the United States. Budget includes over $3 billion to ensure that our law enforcement officers have the resources they need to faithfully execute the law.
What can we do to defend our? But obviously, this president isn't. I mean, some people support him. I don't. But other than removing him from office, what can we do?
Well, we can remove him from office. I mean, that's the main thing. And the good news is that the American people do not buy what he's selling. They don't like him. A majority of Americans have never agreed with him. If we turn out our people, those people that are decent, that cherish the values of this country, if we register them to the vote and we turn them out, he is a one-term nightmare only. And they can do everything right and still lose because they don't have the numbers. The demographic that supports them is an older and dying, literally dying demographic.
So we're signing the $8.3 billion. I asked you 2.5, and I got 8.3, and I'll take it.
I had the privilege on Monday of having a walk through Chinatown. I always love to go there. I feel very proud of it. I always feel very privileged to and say, oh, my poor colleagues, and they come home, they don't have the advantage of this beautiful diversity that I have in my district. But sadly, Chinatown is being very hard hit by the lack of tourism and the rest of the coronavirus. So a number of us went there. Many press came too, to see us go to a temple, light the candle, have a lunch, dim sum that was, go visit and make fortune cookies in the Fortune Cookie Factory. By the way, fortune cookie machine, which is fabulous.
Again, the same day you were up here briefing us, and I was there on Soleimani strikes, and we didn't hear a word from you on the threats to 4 embassies. Why not?
There were multiple embassies, which my diplomatic security team had enormous concern about.
Sir, I have such little time.
Are you going to let me answer the question?
No, because you're not answering the question, sir. I'm not asking you to reveal classified information.
Mr. Chairman, will you please let the witness answer the question?
I want to talk about some important points that were made in the very beginning of this hearing. The first comment from the other side today was, how can we make sure that we offer Iran aid? From Mr. Sicilian, can we ensure that we can offer aid over to Iran? That was the first question that came out of this committee. Second comment from the other side.
Would the gentleman yield?
No, I will not. Second question that came out was this, offering that you should spend more time here and that Secretary Clinton spent 11 hours here. Wow, we should give her a hand of congratulations. Not even 1 hour for every hour that she allowed our men and women overseas to be killed without dispatching any QRF, any quick response force. Congratulations for that. So I want to ask here, are any of my colleagues, I'm willing to offer time for this, who have been chastising the president, who keeps saying over and over and over that we're less safe because of killing Soleimani, willing to say right now, I'll offer you time, that you wish Soleimani was still alive? I'm willing to yield you time. You said we're less safe. I'm willing to yield you time if you want to say you wish.
I'm happy to answer your question. Of course, we think
I
the
didn't
American.
yield you time yet. If
Well,
you,
you said you were going to yield time. Do you want an answer or not?
Would you like to ask me if I would yield you a moment?
Yes. Happy to answer your question.
I will yield
We
you a
believe the
moment,
principal responsibility of the President of the United States is keep the American people safe. We believe this action ultimately has made us less safe.
So do you want Soleimani still alive?
Of course not. Nobody on this side wants Soleimani alive. You know better than that. Shame on you for even asking that question. And shame on you for suggesting we're not concerned about the safety of our embassies.
I reclaim my
You
time.
know better than that.
Will the gentleman yield? Will the gentleman yield?
I'll offer a moment.
Will the gentleman yield?
Would you like to offer that you wish Soleimani was still alive? I will yield.
Will the gentleman yield? Yes. I'm Congresswoman Spanberger from Virginia.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
And referencing what you stated earlier, the point of it was there was no evidence given in the classified briefing. None. None of imminence. None. And as a former CIA case officer, I am very happy that Soleimani is dead.
So
but we need to have strategy, and we need to ensure that we are protecting the American people, and those are the focuses of our questions to the Secretary today.
Yield, please. Everyone yield. The gentleman reclaims his time.
Again, it's said no less than 10 times, we're less safe, we're less safe, we're less safe because Soleimani was killed. It was said over and over here. So that's a simple question. Do you wish he was still alive? I'll still hold on for another moment here if anybody wants to offer. They wish he was still alive.
Will the gentleman yield?
I haven't yielded you any more time. No. You've used up enough. Thank you.
And good afternoon to everyone online and in the room. First, as usual, the numbers. In the past 24 hours, China reported 329 cases, the lowest in more than a month. Outside China, there are now 4,351 cases in 49 countries and 67 deaths. Since yesterday, Denmark, Estonia, Lithuania, Netherlands, and Nigeria have all reported their first cases. All these cases have links to Italy. 24 cases have been exported from Italy to 14 countries, and 97 cases have been exported from Iran to 11 countries. The continued increase in the number of cases and the number of affected countries over the last few days are clearly of concern. The report of the WHO-China Joint Mission has now published its report, which is available in English on the WHO website and will also be posted in Chinese on the National Health Commission website.
Hi, this is Lisette Waco from Forbes magazine. My question is, in terms of the continued spread and growth of the virus, how much closer, or are we any closer to declaring a pandemic as opposed to epidemics?
To declare a pandemic, it is unhelpful to do that when you're still trying to contain a disease. A pandemic is also a word that may be attractive at a global level to describe an event, but it's not necessarily so if you're one of the 2 billion people living in countries with weaker health systems, because what's in that sense you're accepting, as I said to my colleague from Mexico, is that you now are entering a phase of mitigation and that you're giving up on the possibility of containing and slowing down the virus. So pandemic as a colloquial term, we've seen the pandemic of obesity or the pandemic of HIV or all of these words that are used. We want to move beyond colloquial terms. If we say there's a pandemic of coronavirus, we're essentially accepting that every human on the planet will be exposed to that virus. The data does not support that as yet, and China have clearly shown that that's not necessarily the natural outcome of this event.
And if you put a microphone, these people back there, like the Academy Awards used to be, not anymore. Best movie of the year. It's made in South Korea. What's that all about? Best movie. I'm waiting to see the best movie of the year. And it's made, he said it's garbage. Very dishonest people. Now the Democrats are politicizing the coronavirus. You know that, right? Coronavirus. They're politicizing it. We did one of the great jobs. You say, how's President Trump doing? They go, oh, not good, not good. But I say, so let's get this right. A virus starts in China, bleeds its way into various countries all around the world, doesn't spread widely at all in the United States because of the early actions that myself and my administration took against a lot of other wishes. And the Democrats' single talking point, and you see it, is that it's Donald Trump's fault, right? It's Donald Trump's fault. No, just things that happen. But you know what? This does show you things happen. Whoever thought of this 2 weeks ago? Who would have thought this could be going on 4 weeks ago? You wouldn't. But things happen in life, and you have to be prepared, and you have to be flexible, and you have to be able to go out and get it. And my guys, we have the best professionals in the world, the best in the world, and we are so ready. At the same time that I initiated the first federally mandated quarantine in over 50 years, we had to quarantine some people. They weren't happy. They weren't happy about it. I want to tell you, there are a lot of people that are not so happy, but after 2 weeks, they got happy. You know who got happy? The people around them got happy. That's who got happy.
One person with coronavirus in King County, Washington State, has died. This now makes the first coronavirus death confirmed in the U.S.
The news, Alex, is that in Washington State, they are confirming now the first U.S. death from COVID-19.
This morning, a tragic turn in the coronavirus outbreak, the first death from the disease here in the United States. The victim, a Washington State man in his 50s who had underlying health conditions. The CDC says it is likely community spread, and the source of the infection is still unknown.
In the last 24 hours, there were almost 9 times more cases reported outside China than inside China. This is a unique virus with unique features. This virus is not influenza. We are in uncharted territory. We have never seen before a respiratory pathogen that's capable of community transmission. If this was an influenza epidemic, we would have expected to see widespread community transmission across the globe by now, and efforts to slow it down or contain it would not be feasible. And from the start, when the number of cases in the rest of the world was so small, it was less than 100 when we declared public health emergency of international concern, you remember. And it was actually a day, 2 days after we have seen human-to-human transmission that we declared public health emergency of international concern. Less than 100 cases in the rest of the world, and no deaths actually. And we had window of opportunity. And what we said then was, of course we can have concerns and worries, it's understandable, but let's really calm down and do the right things and use the window of opportunity to contain this outbreak.
So what we're saying is what we've been saying, that the risk to any individual American remains low.
Why not then call it a pandemic? Because you know very well it is.
Well, in fact, I spoke today with Dr. Tedros, the head of the World Health Organization, about that question. I'll give you some insight into their thinking, which is, while we've seen...
I'm not interested in their thinking, to be candid with you. You're responsible for your department. The NIH, the Centers for Disease Control, are responsible for the public's health. I will speak, if I may, to you, sir, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity. I could care less what the World Health Organization has to say about what is happening to Americans and how this government is being led.
Well, Lou, within the United States, whether you call it a pandemic or you don't call it a pandemic is irrelevant. It doesn't change one single action that we would take here in the United States. Not one, Lou.
Okay,
it really just doesn't matter.
Why not call it that and be just as straightforward as possible?
Why? Lou, what does it add? What does it add?
Just how vulnerable are children? NBC medical correspondent Dr. John Torres is here to answer some commonly asked questions. But the aspect of this that is about children is kind of surprising because, as I understand it, they haven't really been affected as much as adults have by the coronavirus.
And you're right. That's the one thing I think a lot of people are going to be surprised about. The World Health Organization did a study, and they found out that of the children, this is in China, of the tens of thousands of cases in China, less than 3% were actually in children. And of the children that got infected with the coronavirus, over 98% only had mild symptoms. So it hardly affects children at all. So it's one of those things they seem to have a little bit of protection for. And I'm getting a lot of questions about school closures and things like that. Those are happening out of an abundance of cautions. So this doesn't mean don't send your kids to school. Just when you do, just make sure they know what they need to do.
Do we know why that's the case with kids?
Well, we think it's happening for a couple reasons. One, kids have immune systems that can rapidly adapt and change. So if they get the coronavirus, it can fight it. Plus, they've probably been exposed to other coronaviruses all their life because they get those colds all the time. Those giving them some immunity to this one. So their immune system is a little bit stronger than ours is fighting this off.
Maybe, Alex, you'd like to start, and then we'll have the doctor say something.
Well, we just had an incredible visit up at NIH at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease that Dr. Fauci leads. And the president got to hear from the actual bench scientists who, within 3 days, developed a potential vaccine for the novel coronavirus. And they reported some really important news to the president, that yesterday the Food and Drug Administration authorized the entry of that vaccine into phase 1 safety clinical trials.
Let's get something straight. Wall Street didn't build this country. You built this country. The middle class built this country. And unions built the middle class. In the neighborhoods we come from, the three...
Inside the walls of this court, the Supreme Court is hearing arguments, as you know, for the first major abortion right cases since Justices Kavanaugh and Justices Gorsuch came to the bench. We know what's at stake. Over the last 3 years, women's reproductive rights have come under attack in a way we haven't seen in modern history. I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions.
Breaking news on KPIX5 and streaming on CBSN Bay Area. San Francisco's mayor announces the city's first 2 cases of coronavirus.
I want to be clear that we have been planning this for weeks, and so we are prepared as a city. We want people to continue to do exactly what we've asked people to do, and that is make sure that you're washing your hands and that you're doing the things that are going to help to protect yourselves in the midst of what we know could continue to be a virus that spreads.
Tennesseans are grateful for your support. We had immediate response from FEMA. You gave an emergency disaster declaration, which will be very helpful to the families in this community and all across Tennessee who've suffered great loss.
Me, voi dovete proteggere me, non io voi. Folli, siete veramente folli. Folli. Presidente, io voglio dire, io non faccio male a nessuno con la mascherina. Sono autodefedante, cioè ho problemi immunitari, io mi tolgo la mascherina e vi dico, io ero in quelle 3 regioni, voi state meglio così o io con la mascherina? Per me vi consiglio che io possa tenere la mascherina a vostra protezione, e se voi foste intelligenti l'avreste anche voi la mascherina per proteggere me. Voi dovete proteggere me, non io voi.
We are going to be asking tomorrow, we're seeing the Senate, we're going to be meeting with House Republicans, Mitch McConnell, everybody, and discussing a possible payroll tax cut or relief. We're also going to be talking about hourly wage earners getting help so that they can be in a position where they're not going to ever miss a paycheck. We're going to be working with companies and small companies, large companies, a lot of companies, so that they don't get penalized for something that's not their fault. It's not their fault. It's not our country's fault. This was something that we were thrown into, and we're going to handle it. Also, we're going to be seeing small business administration and creating loans for small businesses.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, Madam. Well, I'm actually wondering, do you really realise that we're faced with a very extraordinary situation? This can only be compared with a war, because I'm kind of ashamed of this Europe that is incapable of reacting to such a huge emergency. I'm ashamed of a Europe that over a month has been talking about coronavirus without doing anything. You've created a task force with 5 commissioners and nothing has happened.
WHO has been assessing this outbreak around the clock, and we're deeply concerned both by the alarming levels of spread and severity and by the alarming levels of inaction. We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
Taking early, intense action, we have seen dramatically fewer cases of the virus in the United States than are now present in Europe. The European Union failed to take the same precautions and restrict travel from China and other hotspots. As a result, a large number of new clusters in the United States were seeded by travelers from Europe. After consulting with our top government health professionals, I have decided to take several strong but necessary actions to protect the health and well-being of all Americans. To keep new cases from entering our shores, we will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days.
Okay, first of all, it isn't a foreign virus. It's just a virus, okay? Trump makes it sound like Corona doesn't speak English. And also, we can blame Europe for many things. Colonialism, skinny jeans, Piers Morgan, but this virus is worldwide, all right? It was gonna get here no matter what Europe did. Honestly, it's beginning to look like shutting down borders is just Trump's go-to solution for everything. This is all he thinks about. What problem? Shut a border. Problem? Shut a border. Does he do this in his personal life too? Yeah? Is Melania just like, I don't love you anymore, Donald? And he's like, close the borders. No one's getting in or out of this marriage.
Well, Trump's travel ban caught a lot of people by surprise here in Europe. Let's go over to correspondent Bernd Riegert, who's standing by for us in Brussels. Hi, Bernd. EU leaders have been holding an emergency meeting to discuss this decision from the White House. What's emerged from that meeting?
The EU Commission and also the 27 member states issued a statement saying that they disapprove of this travel ban.
European Union leaders have expressed sharp disapproval over travel restrictions announced by U.S. President Donald Trump in a bid to curb the coronavirus outbreak. The ban bars travelers from 26 European countries from entering the U.S. for the next 30 days. The EU has condemned the move, criticizing Trump for making the decision without consultation.
To unleash the full power of the federal government in this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency. 2 very big words.
More than 132,000 cases of COVID-19 have now been reported to WHO from 123 countries and territories. 5,000 people have lost their lives, a tragic milestone. Europe has now become the epicenter of the pandemic, with more reported cases and deaths than the rest of the world combined, apart from China. More cases are now being reported every day than were reported in China at the highest of its epidemic.
My first question is, you said that you don't take responsibility, but you did disband the White House Pandemic Office, and the officials that were working in that office left this administration abruptly. So what responsibility do you take to that? And the officials that worked in that office said that the White House lost valuable time because that office wasn't disbanded. What do you make of that?
Well, I just think it's a nasty question, because what we've done is, and Tony has said numerous times that we've saved thousands of lives because of the quick closing. And when you say me, I didn't do it. We have a group of people. I could ask perhaps my administration, but I could perhaps ask Tony about that because I don't know anything about it. I mean, you say we did that. I don't know anything about it.
You don't know about the reorganization that happened at the National Security
It's the administration.
Council.
Perhaps they do that. You know, people let people go. You used to be with a different newspaper than you are now. You know, things like that happen.
But this was
Please go ahead. We're doing a great job. Let me tell you, these professionals.
In just a few short months, the virus has swept through more than 100 countries. There was a media ban on coverage of the international mission, but Dr. Aylward has agreed to share some of his personal and rare images of life at coronavirus ground zero.
Even getting into Wuhan was difficult because the city was shut down, right?
They stopped the train, stopped the plane, so this is a dedicated bullet train that zoomed us in 4 hours.
This just extraordinary scenes of just completely desolate.
Yeah, this is heartbreaking. This is Wuhan train station. Should be tens of thousands of people every hour moving through there, and it's empty. This vast, cavernous, hyper-modern, nerve center of China, silent. What we saw in China is they could use fundamental measures that we never thought would stop a virus like this that actually seemed to be reversing the course of what was the worst outbreak there. China has had no cases anywhere except Hubei for days.
In the beginning of the outbreak, China was heavily criticized for not reporting the spate of mysterious illnesses quickly enough. But Dr. Aylward maintains that the steps they eventually took saved hundreds of thousands of lives.
Well, they were the pro league, and what we're seeing in other places is sometimes the amateur league.
Breaking news tonight, millions of Americans ordered to shelter in place as the coronavirus pandemic spreads. The drastic new measures in the San Francisco area. Residents told to stay in their homes and avoid contact for the next 3 weeks.
These measures will be disruptive to day-to-day life, but there is no need to panic.
So the state's going to be dealing through themselves and with local government, local physicians, local everybody. They're also dealing with us.
When you say a stimulus package for American workers, do you mean direct payments to Americans, or are you talking about a payroll tax holiday?
Although the president likes the idea of the payroll tax holiday, I will tell you what we've heard from many people, and the president has said we can consider this. The payroll tax holiday would get people money over the next 6 to 8 months. We're looking at sending checks to Americans immediately. And what we've heard from hardworking Americans, many companies have now shut down, whether it's bars or restaurants. Americans need cash now, and the president wants to get cash now. And I mean now, in the next 2 weeks.
How much?
What do you make of the federal government's response and the White House sort of ramping up their response in the last week?
I think the ramp up is definitely is needed, but we also need to go even further. We need what we need when we need it, and we need support and we need resources now.
We're sending, upon request, the 2 hospital ships. They're being prepared right now. They're massive ships. They're the big white ships with the Red Cross on the sides. One is called the Mercy and the other is called the Comfort. Earlier this week, the first clinical trial of the vaccine candidate for the virus began in Washington State, as you probably know. The genetic sequence of the virus was first published in January. but thanks to the unprecedented partnership between the FDA, NIH, and the private sector, we've reached human trials for the vaccine just 8 weeks later. That's a record by many, many months. It used to take years to do this, and now we did it just in a very short while. That's the fastest development in history. Today, I'm also announcing that the Department of Housing and Urban Development is providing immediate relief to renters and homeowners by suspending all foreclosures and evictions until the end of April.
We've seen the Chinese government kick out reporters from the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post. What is your message to the Chinese when it comes to transparency at a moment where you still have reporters asking you questions here at the White House?
Yeah, I'm not happy to see it. I don't, I have my own disputes with all three of those media groups. I think you know that very well. But I don't like seeing that at all. I'm not happy about that at all. Yes, please.
Top story this morning. The U.S. State Department has issued its citizens not to travel abroad for all American citizens. Now, this as the coronavirus pandemic. The level 4 do not travel advisory advises all Americans to avoid all international travel due to the outbreak. Now, the alert also said in countries where commercial departure options remain available, U.S. citizens who live in the U.S. should arrange for immediate return back to the U.S. unless they are prepared to remain abroad for an indefinite period of time.
Uncharted territory, as you know. We think we have ideas. It doesn't help to say what the ideas are. I would hope very soon. We've pulled together as a nation. People are, for the most part, doing what they're supposed to be doing. The social distancing is very interesting, a whole new term that's become it's become somewhat of a hot term, but people are listening and they're really doing a great job. This country is an amazing country. I think you're up to 141 different countries right now, so it's very uncharted territory. It could have been stopped pretty easily if everybody had known about it a number of months before people started reading about it.
You said you did.
Excuse me. Before we started reading about it, it could have been stopped in its tracks. Unfortunately, they didn't decide to make it public, but the whole world is suffering because of it.
You did say a few days ago, though, you did have a sense that this was a pandemic that was coming. So why was the United States not prepared with more testing?
We were very prepared. The only thing we weren't prepared for was the media. The media has not treated it fairly. I'll tell you how prepared I was. I called for a ban from people coming in from China long before anybody thought it was. In fact, it was your network. I believe they called me a racist because I did that. It was many of the people in the room. They called me racist and other words because I did that, because I went so early. So when you say we weren't prepared, had I let these tens of thousands of people come in from China a day, we would have had something right now that would have been, you wouldn't have even recognized it compared to where we are. How many people have passed away? How many people have died as of this moment? You could multiply that by a factor of many, many, many. So when you say that I wasn't prepared, I was the first one to do the ban. Now other countries are following what I did. But the media doesn't acknowledge that. They know it's true. They know it's true, but they don't want to write about it. Yeah, go ahead.
The president of Mexico is drawing criticism for making light of the coronavirus pandemic. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador laughingly shrugged off risk for his country this week by pulling out religious tokens and flashing an American $2 bill. As of Wednesday, Mexico had reported some 120 coronavirus infections and 1 death. Despite Mexico's shared border with the United States and dramatic efforts to contain the pandemic worldwide, López Obrador has portrayed his country as largely safe. He is out in the public, appearing at celebratory events, embracing and shaking hands. López Obrador has neither shut borders nor restricted travel from countries hard hit by the coronavirus. He scoffs at health ministry recommendations that Mexicans stop greeting one another with traditional hugs and kisses. Mexican political commentator Jesus Silva Herzog Marquez says his irresponsibility is almost criminal. Some health officials estimate that as many as 250,000 Mexicans could become infected, with more than 10,000 requiring hospitalization and intensive care. But López Obrador points to a World Health Organization disease map and says for now there's little reason to worry.
Our nation's top healthcare officials are extremely concerned about the grave public health consequences of mass, uncontrolled cross-border movement. And that would be mostly, and even beyond, but mostly during this global pandemic. Every week, our border agents encounter thousands of unscreened, unvetted, and unauthorized entries from dozens of countries, and we've had this problem for decades. For decades, you know the story, but now it's with the national emergencies and all of the other things that we've declared, we can actually do something about it. We're taking a very strong hold of that, and we have before, but this is now at a level that nobody's ever approached. In normal times, these massive flows place a vast burden on our healthcare system, but during a global pandemic, they threaten to create a perfect storm that would spread the infection to our border agents, migrants, and to the public at large. Left unchecked, this would cripple our immigration system, overwhelm our healthcare system, and severely damage our national security. We're not going to let that happen. To confront these public health degrees, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has decided to exercise its authority under the Title 42 of the U.S. Code to give Customs and Border Protection the tools it needs to prevent the transmission of the virus coming through both the northern and the southern borders.
Overseas now, and the epicenter of the outbreak in Europe, Italy, decimated by the coronavirus, reporting 793 deaths just in the last 24 hours. Its deadliest day since the outbreak. Here's ABC's Julia McFarlane in London.
Tonight, Italy reporting a devastating new death toll. At least 793 people succumbing to the virus, its biggest one-day jump. More than 4,800 have died. The scenes in hospitals horrifying as overworked doctors struggle with this wave. In the north, local cemeteries have run out of space. One doctor treating patients now showing symptoms, quarantined at home, describing the unspeakable tragedies.
You can imagine once these patients are admitted at the hospital, the friends, the parents, the relatives, they can see no one anymore. Some of them die alone.
Spain, now the second worst hit country in Europe, also reporting its biggest one-day increase, more than 1,300 dead since the outbreak. And in Britain, now a ghost town, a 25% increase in fatalities. They know at least 5,000 infected. As London and Europe locks down, China appears to be on the mend, reporting no new daily infections for at least 3 days. They're now busy sending supplies and medical teams to Europe after facing criticism they didn't do enough to contain this virus from the start. Tom?
And as KPIX5's Betty Yu will tell us, San Francisco's mayor has a stern message to residents tonight. Take the shelter-in-place order seriously. Betty?
Ken, and to really drive her message home, Mayor London Breed held a virtual press conference today to emphasize the importance of social distancing. She warned San Franciscans that she will take more aggressive measures moving forward to make sure everyone cooperates.
This is not the time for a party, for a play date, socializing and coming together and not taking this social distancing requirement seriously. You are putting lives at stake. You are putting public health in jeopardy.
Our community's reality is this country's future if we don't do anything. Hospital workers do not have protective equipment. We don't have the necessary ventilators. But we have to go into this vote eyes wide open. What did the Senate majority fight for? One of the largest corporate bailouts with as few strings as possible in American history. Shameful. The greed of that fight is wrong for crumbs, for our families. And the option that we have is to either let them suffer with nothing or to allow this greed and billions of dollars, which will be leveraged into trillions of dollars, to contribute to the largest income inequality.
These men and women were quite literally called up a few days ago, came from hospitals all over the state of California and the region, and came together under the order of President Donald Trump. And I want to just thank the president personally on behalf of a grateful region, on behalf of a grateful state, for sending this ship and the incredible resources that reside within this ship to the state of California. Could not have happened soon enough, and it would not simply have happened without his support and leadership. We are in the process now of having secured roughly 4,000 beds of some type to prepare for the surge, which we believe will start taking shape in the next week or two based upon our modeling.
President Donald Trump announced yesterday that the USNS Comfort will head to New York tomorrow to help combat the coronavirus. And he also says that he will be there to see the ship off. Now, the Comfort is fully stocked with medical supplies for the mission. A crew of 1,200 military doctors, nurses, and specialists will help with non-COVID-19 patients as hospitals onshore take care of those with the virus. Now, keep in mind, New York has a third of the country's confirmed cases, and the president says it will leave ahead of schedule since the Navy was able to prep the ship quicker than expected.
In an online interview with The Pulse, WHO's Assistant Director General, Dr. Bruce Howard, defended the organization.
WHO recognized very early on that this virus had the potential to become a pandemic. And the message we went out, we were very clear about that, was we actually, as societies, have the ability, it appears, to prevent this becoming a pandemic. If we do the kind of measures that China put in place.
Will the WHO consider Taiwan's membership?
Hello? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I couldn't hear your question.
Okay, yeah. Let me repeat the question.
No, that's okay. Let's move to another one then.
Right, because I'm actually curious on talking about Taiwan as well, on Taiwan's case.
We decided to give Dr. Howard another call to follow up.
And I just want to see if you can comment a bit on how Taiwan has done so far in terms of containing the virus.
Well, we've already talked about China, and when you look across all the different areas of China, they've actually all done quite a good job. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much for inviting us to participate, and good luck as you go forward with the battle in Hong Kong.
Japanese politician Aso Taro blasted the World Health Organization for bowing to China and excluding Taiwan.
Speaking to Japanese lawmakers, the deputy prime minister said the WHO should change its name to the CHO, or China Health Organization. He said being excluded from the global health body, Taiwan was driven to become a world leader in combating the coronavirus.
The Japan official took issue with former WHO Director General Margaret Chan, charging her with inadequate accountability. He said the current Director General was no better for giving in to China's spin about the coronavirus. Early on, if the WHO had not insisted to the world that China had no pneumonia epidemic, then everybody would have taken precautions. The WHO, which is a global organization, does not even include Taiwan. And then precisely because Taiwan is not a member of the WHO, it becomes a world leader in fighting the epidemic.
Hi, Willie. Good morning.
Speaker Pelosi, we appreciate your time. Good morning to you as well. We've obviously, for the last several weeks, cataloged the failures of the White House, the failures of the president, the failures to take seriously what is now obviously a pandemic and a crisis in cities across the country. But the good news is we live in a federal government with equal branches of government, and your body has great power as well. So as you look back on the last, say, 3 months or so, do you believe that you all in Congress should have moved quicker? Do you take any responsibility for the slow response?
No, not at all. We have, first of all, we had hoped that there would be leadership from the White House because the president has to sign the bill. But we've had, as I say, 3 very strong.
So let me follow up to that, Mr. President. Not every governor has issued a stay-at-home order. All of you have made it very clear how important it is to stay home, that we are in a dire situation here. And that's how you stop the spread, is staying home. Sure. Why not take the power out of the hands of the governors and you just issue a stay-at-home order for every state in this country?
States are different, and I understand that Governor of Florida, great governor, Ron DeSantis, issued one today, and that's good. That's great. But there are some states that are different. There are some states that don't have much of a problem. There are some, well, they don't have the problem. They don't have thousands of people that are positive, or thousands of people that even think they might have it, or hundreds of people in some cases. So you have to look. You have to look at states. You have to give a little bit of flexibility. I mean, if a state in the Midwest, or if Alaska, as an example, doesn't have a problem, it's awfully tough to say close it down. So we have to have a little bit of flexibility.